This is a set of post-war 022 Lionel switches that I'm going to be working on. You can see what kind of condition that they're in. I checked them both out, and neither of them work. We're going to be working on them to get the motors activated, number one. Number two, I also need to get the non-derailing feature working and clean up and get ready to go. This is a little bit more of a close-up view of the right-hand throw switch. A little bit of rust, a lot of crud, paint spots, things like that on it. But what's really good is the fact that I don't see any pitting in the rails, number one. And number two, the rails are pretty straight. This is the left-hand throw switch, and there's a little bit of pitting on these things, but again, I find that the rails are pretty straight. This one got nicked up a little bit. I don't know if you could see it there, and I don't know that I want to even try and straighten that out as much as it is I want to try and clean it back up, maybe put it back into condition again. But those are the two that I'll be working on. Here's the back of the switches. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking out these screws right here. There's one there, there's one here, and those hold the cap on. They'll be set aside. I'll put it back in the cap just to make sure that they don't get lost. These screws right here, they're machine screws. What you'll end up doing is you'll end up saving these separately, and one of them fits into a specialized hex nut. The other one is actually built into the body itself. I'm also going to be removing the screws that are in up here that hold the piece together, the back plate together, and hold it on there, because I'm going to have to get to the joint for the non-derailing feature. That's it. So I removed the screws to the motor. These are body screws. They're just real simple screws. They're about 1/4 of an inch long. Not sure what the actual thread is. I won't speculate. Anyway, I know that they're 1/4 of an inch long. Same kind of body screws that they have that go into the cars. These are the specialty screws. They're machine screw, and you can see, well, maybe you can't, they've got a hex head. And I found I've lost those things. They've gone flying in the shop when I'm not careful. They're expensive to replace. You can get them, but one of them is in the motor itself, comes out. The other one, this one right here, it's actually it becomes part of the body of the switch itself. This is what the switch in the motor looks like. I'm going to take the cover off now, and this is kind of the guts of the machine. By the way, those they come off pretty handily. And we're going to be working on this. We're going to be working to kind of clean this thing up and get it going. It's not too bad. We're also going to have to see if we can get a light that goes in there. This is intact right here. That's good to know, because that's the thing that helps you turn your lamp on this. Put the screws in here so I don't lose them. That's just kind of a personal quirk of mine. That's it. I just took the screws to hold the back plate off on this thing right here, and we're going to remove that. Again, comes right apart. The screws will go into the old bottle that we've got here, and the problem that I found with this is that, see this joint right here? I don't know if you can see it, but I can actually move that up and down. That's a bad sign, guys. If that's like that right there, that means the non-derailing feature will not work. So we're going to take care of that. We'll have to solder it back together. If you don't know how to solder, you might want to learn how. Okay, I just took the other switch apart. Same problem. You can see it's loose. Gonna have to solder that back together again. And the trick to this, just so you know, I gotta get out of the light. There's When you take a look at this down here, you'll see that the solder is all on one of the contacts, but there's two potential contacts there. Well, you have to keep it on the far contact. If you get it down below, if you really get these two pieces, if they both get soldered up or somehow, just bad. You get a lot of chatter, it won't work, and you might as well have it broken. Just thought I'd mention that. Before I go about cleaning up the front part of the switches, what I did was I went in and I soldered this. And as you can see, what I do is I take a piece of wire, and after I've tinned it, I go in to that joint right there, and I resolder it with a piece of wire. It just holds up better, number one. And I found that most of the soldering that was done on an 022 in this particular joint, they may be cold solder joints, and cold solder joints break. This just helps them to last a little bit longer. Something else I do, this is the next phase, I just take a piece of electrical tape and I put over the top of that. Sometimes what happens, I showed you how I resoldered that. Sometimes that can raise the contact point. Next item, what I do is I go in and I clean up the contacts. You've got your ground strap right here, and a lot of times you'll find out that that little ground strap right there, it's brown and it needs to be cleaned up. So I use your good old-fashioned Scotch-Brite pad. I use either the brown or the green. In this particular instance, I'm not really worried about any scratches showing up outside, so I'll attack it with a green. I also have a contact point here and a contact point there. Well, I want to make sure that they're clean too, because if they're not clean, we don't make contact, switch doesn't work. Okay, so I ended up doing exactly the same thing here. You'll see I've already got this. Again, I soldered a piece of wire in place just to hold it in place. So it's pretty much the same thing. But the one thing I wanted to do is I wanted to show you this right here. This, my friends, is a critter casing. I'm going to clean that out of there. And it's often been said to me that if you haven't worked on Postwar Lionel until you've taken out at least one critter casing. Anyway, this is going to go into evapor rust. I'm going to soak it face down. I've got a box set up over here. It's kind of hard to see, but I put them face down. There's just enough evapor rust in there to cover the tracks and not necessarily get to the plastic. Albeit, the evapor rust will not do any harm to the plastic. That will take any residual rust off the surface of the tracks and allow me to clean it up. So we're going to do that now. Bye. Okay, here we are with the tools of the trade. What I've done so far is I've actually gone in with electrical contact cleaner, and I've cleaned these 4 contact points. After I've finished with the contact points, I also put a little bit of electrical plastic safe multi-purpose precision lubricant on it. I've actually had pretty good luck with this. It keeps it from corroding. I get pretty good slippage, and actually the carbon surface actually helps them to bind together a little bit. Down in here there's some gears. I put white lithium grease on the gears that are down there. You can see a little bit of the residue right there. In here you'll find you've got a piston. It's a solenoid. Down in there, that can get crudted up. I squirt CRC electrical contact cleaner down there. You can use any type and just work it back and forth until it loosens up. And that's usually pretty good, and it lasts for a couple of years. These contact points right here, I go underneath these and very gently I kind of push them up a little bit so that they'll continue to make contact with the back end of the switch itself. It's important to be able to do that. And also, if I spin this around, I've cleaned this up a little bit. That contact right there, that's where your plug goes in if you're using direct power from your transformer as opposed to track power. I just cleaned it up with some 600 aught wet dry paper just to kind of keep it clean. And that's pretty much it. Okay, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to test one of these guys out right now. I've got my Train Master all set up over here, TW, and I've got it set at about 12 and a half volts. Now I like to test things at low voltage just to be sure that things work. And you can see what's going on. So it's working just fine. We test the non-derailing feature just by touching touching these rails, and you can see it works. It's working. It's working. It's working. So I mean, if it's operating at 12 and a half, then you know it's going to be fine for running around. So that's it. It's a little trick I'm going to try. Somebody told me about this. I don't know how many of you have ever had a hard time getting a pin out, but I found out that with a pair of cutters like this, if you take this and just kind of rock it up, these pins can actually come out pretty easily. I don't know how many people have had trouble. I just kind of rock them back and forth and ease them out, and it's all good, rather than try and pull them straight out.